Be me, 26, working a decent but boring IT job. Be not me, Mia, my best friend since we were teenagers. So, this story starts maybe a year or so ago. For the longest time, I was basically orbiting Mia. She was smart, funny, very into activism and social justice, and I had a massive crush on her for years. Of course, I never had the guts to do anything about it. I was the reliable guy, the good guy, the one she called for everything. Need a ride from the airport at midnight? I'm there. Your laptop is acting up and you have a paper due? I'll spend my Saturday fixing it. Need someone to help you move into your new apartment? Guess who gets the call? That's where it all really began to unravel for me, the moving day. It was a Saturday in late spring, one of those first really nice days of the year. I had planned to just relax, maybe play some games, but my phone rang at 9 a.m. It was Mia, sounding panicked. Apparently the friends who were supposed to help her bailed at the last minute. Jake, I'm so sorry to ask, but you're literally the only person I can count on. I'm desperate. My brain screamed no, but my mouth said, yeah, of course. I'll be there in 30. I get to her old place and it's chaos. Boxes everywhere, half of them not even taped shut. She gives me this huge, grateful hug and tells me I'm a lifesaver. For the next 8 hours, I hauled boxes, disassembled her bed frame, and carefully packed her ridiculous number of potted plants. She, for the most part, directed traffic. She'd be on her phone, taking pictures of the mess for her social media story, with a caption like, "Moving is a patriarchal construct designed to exhaust women." Then she'd look up and say, "Hey, can you make sure you lift that box with your legs? Don't want you to strain your back. Thanks for the tip." We finally get everything to her new apartment, a small one-bedroom place downtown. The final boss of the day was a giant, flat-packed bookshelf from IKEA. The name was something unpronounceable, like a demon from a horror movie. The instructions were just a series of pictograms of a genderless cartoon man looking increasingly distressed. I could relate. I spent the next 2 hours on the floor, surrounded by 100 screws and wooden panels, trying to decipher the Swedish hieroglyphs. Mia sat on her couch, which was the first thing we brought in, scrolling through her phone again. She was ordering food for us, which was nice, but she didn't help with the shelf at all. At one point, she looked over at me, struggling with a piece that wouldn't fit. You know, it's so refreshing to see a man doing something constructive instead of just being toxically masculine. You're so good at this stuff. I just grunted in response, sweating and covered in sawdust. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the bookshelf was standing. It was a little wobbly, but it was up. We ate pizza on the floor, and she was in a great mood. "I seriously couldn't have done this without you, Jake. You're the best." My tired brain saw this as an opening. My heart was pounding. "You know I'd do anything for you, Mia." I looked at her, trying to convey everything with my eyes. She smiled, but it was that specific polite smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "I know. You're such an amazing friend. Like the brother I never had." And there it was. The B word. Brother. The sound of my hopes and dreams crashing and burning. I drove home that night, feeling completely empty. I'd just spent my entire Saturday doing hard labor for a girl who saw me as a piece of furniture that could talk. Things continued like this for a few more months. The dynamic was always the same. She lived her life, went on dates with guys who were the complete opposite of me. We're talking aspiring musicians with bad tattoos, guys who called themselves entrepreneurs but still lived with their parents, that kind of crowd. And every single time, it would end in disaster. That's when I would get the call. It was usually late, well after midnight on a weeknight. I'd be woken up by my phone vibrating on the nightstand. It was always her. I'd answer and just hear sobbing on the other end. "He's such a jerk. All men are trash." And I would spend the next hour, half asleep, listening to her break down every single text message, every interaction, trying to figure out where it went wrong. She would complain about how these guys were emotionally unavailable, how they were intimidated by her strong personality, how they were just perpetuating toxic masculinity. One night, it got particularly bad. She had been seeing some guy who was a bartender, looked like he'd just stepped out of a magazine. He apparently just ghosted her after their third date. "I just don't get it, Jake," she cried into the phone. "I was myself. I was open and honest. Why do guys always go for these brainless bimbos and not for someone with substance?" I stayed silent because I knew anything I said would be wrong. Then she dropped the classic line. Why can't I just find a guy like you? Someone who's kind and reliable and actually listens. My stupid heart did a little jump. Well, Mia, but she cut me off immediately. Someone like you, but with a spark. You know what I mean? No offense, you're just too nice. We're just friends. I could never see you that way. It would be weird. That one hurt. Too nice. The ultimate disqualifier. I mumbled something like, yeah, I get it, and we hung up. I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. I just stared at the ceiling, feeling like an idiot. The person who was supposed to be my best friend basically saw me as a human-shaped utility, a shoulder to cry on, a handyman, a tech support hotline, but never as a man, not in the way that mattered. The final straw came a couple of weeks after that call. I have a good friend, Ben. We've known each other since college. He's a no-nonsense kind of guy. Ben had met Mia a few times and was never a fan. He saw right through the whole thing. We went out for drinks one Friday night. I was in a terrible mood and started venting about my situation with Mia. I told him about the moving day, the late-night calls, the "you're like a brother" comments. Ben just listened, slowly sipping his beer. He didn't interrupt. When I was finished, he put his glass down on the table with a loud thud. Dude, you need to wake up. I was taken aback. What are you talking about? She's not your friend, Jake. She's your user. You are her emotional tampon and her free labor force. That's it. The words were harsh, but they rang with truth. She's keeping you around as a safety net, he continued. You give her all the emotional support of a boyfriend with none of the commitment, so she's free to chase after the tattooed degenerates she actually wants. You're her backup plan, the one she settles for when she's 35 and her options run out. I tried to defend her. It's not like that. She's just been hurt a lot. We've all been hurt a lot, he said, raising his voice a little. That doesn't give you a free pass to treat people like crap. She doesn't respect you. She would never, ever do for you what you do for her. Ask yourself this. When was the last time she called you just to see how you were doing? I thought about it. I couldn't remember. Every conversation was about her problems, her job, her dating life. Do yourself a favor, Ben said, his voice softening a bit. Go gray rock on her. Stop being so available. Stop answering her calls after 10 p.m. Invest all that time and energy you waste on her. On yourself. We talked for another hour, and by the time I left the bar, something in my head had shifted. Ben was right. Every word was true. I had been so blinded by my feelings for her that I let myself become a doormat. That night, I made a decision. No more. The next week was strange. It was like I was detoxing. I had this constant urge to check my phone to see if she'd message me. She did, of course. A few memes, a complaint about her boss. Instead of replying instantly with a thoughtful paragraph, I'd wait a few hours and just send back a thumbs up emoji. The first late-night call came the Thursday. 1 a.m., I saw her name on the screen. My hand hovered over the accept button. The old me would have answered in a heartbeat. I took a deep breath and pressed decline. It felt both terrifying and incredibly liberating. The next morning, I had a text from her. You okay? Tried calling last night. I waited until my lunch break and replied, Hey, yeah, all good. Was asleep. Hope everything's okay. I didn't ask what was wrong. I didn't invite her to unload on me. Her reply was just a single, Oh, okay. It was working. I was taking back my time, my energy. I followed Ben's advice to the letter. I took the money I would have spent on taking Mia out for friend dinners, where I always ended up paying, and I got a gym membership. The first few weeks were hell. I was weak, uncoordinated. I felt like everyone was staring at me, but I stuck with it. I started seeing small changes. My shirts fit a little better. I could carry all my groceries in one trip without feeling like my arms were going to fall off. It wasn't just about my body. It was about discipline. It was about doing something purely for myself. I also needed a new hobby, something that had nothing to do with computers or sitting in front of a screen. A colleague from work was into rock climbing. He invited me to go with him to an indoor climbing gym one weekend. I was terrible at first. My hands were raw. My muscles ached in places I didn't know I had muscles. But there was something about it. The problem-solving aspect of figuring out a route. The feeling of getting to the top. It was addictive. I started going 2 or 3 times a week. My life started to have a new rhythm. Work, gym, climbing. I was still in touch with Mia, but it was different. Our conversations were shorter, more superficial. She complained that I seemed distant. One time she asked me to help her with some issue on her new website. The old me would have dropped everything and spent the whole day on it. The new me said, "Sorry, I'm swamped this week. I can send you a link to a good tutorial on YouTube, though." The silence on her end of the line was deafening. I was building a life where she wasn't the center of the universe, and I could tell she didn't like it, but I didn't care anymore. I was feeling better than I had in years. I was more confident, more energetic. I wasn't doing it to impress anyone. I was doing it for me. It was about 3 months into this new routine that I met Lily. It was a Tuesday evening at the climbing gym. It was pretty crowded. I was working on a particularly tough bouldering problem. I'd been trying to crack it for a week. I finally figured out the sequence, and as I dropped back down to the mat, feeling triumphant, a girl who was sitting nearby said, "Wow, that was amazing. I've been watching people fall off that route all night." I turned and saw her. She had a bright, genuine smile. We started talking. Her name was Lily. She was new to climbing, but was picking it up fast. I gave her a few pointers on the route she was trying. We ended up climbing together for the rest of the evening. The conversation was easy. We talked about climbing, our jobs, movies, music. It felt normal, effortless. She wasn't complaining or trauma dumping. She was asking me questions about myself. She was actually listening to the answers. When the gym was about to close, I was getting ready to leave when she walked over. "Hey, this was really fun," she said. "I'm still trying to figure out the basics. Would you be up for doing this again sometime? Maybe you could show me the ropes, literally." She was asking me out. My brain short-circuited for a second. A beautiful, interesting girl was actively pursuing a conversation and a future meeting with me. "Yeah," I managed to say, smiling. "I'd really like that." We exchanged numbers. I walked out of the gym that night feeling like I was floating on air. For the first time, it wasn't about chasing someone or trying to prove my worth. It was just a simple, human connection. This was the beginning of the end of my story with Mia. I just didn't know it yet. Lily and I started climbing together regularly. After a couple of weeks of just meeting at the gym, I asked her out on a proper date. We went to this little Italian place downtown. I was nervous, but the conversation just flowed. She was a graphic designer, super creative and passionate about her work. The most amazing thing was that she seemed genuinely interested in me. She asked about my IT job, and instead of her eyes glazing over like Mia's always did, she asked smart questions about what I actually did. She laughed at my dumb jokes. She didn't check her phone once during the entire dinner. At the end of the night, I walked her to her car. There was that slightly awkward moment of silence. "I had a really great time tonight, Jake," she said, breaking the quiet. "Me too," I replied, my voice a little shaky. Then she leaned in and gave me a soft kiss. It wasn't a huge dramatic movie kiss. It was just gentle and perfect. "I'll see you at the gym tomorrow?" she asked, smiling. I just nodded, completely stunned. Driving home, I couldn't wipe the grin off my face. This is what it was supposed to feel like. It wasn't a one-sided struggle. It was a partnership. It was mutual. Our relationship progressed naturally from there. We went on more dates, spent weekends hiking, cooked dinner together. She was everything Mia wasn't. She was appreciative. If I did something for her, like fixing a bug on her portfolio website, she'd thank me by making my favorite dinner or buying me a new book she thought I'd like. She was supportive. When I was stressed about a big project at work, she'd listen and offer encouragement, not just pivot the conversation back to her own problems. About a month in, we were official. We were a couple. I was happy, genuinely, deeply happy. My contact with Mia had dwindled to almost nothing. An occasional text here and there. She had stopped calling late at night, probably because I just never answered anymore. I felt a little guilty for just ghosting our friendship, but honestly, I was too busy living my own life to care that much. The peace didn't last long. Lily and I took a weekend trip to the coast. It was a beautiful sunny weekend. We took a lot of pictures. When we got back, I posted one on my social media. It was a simple photo of the two of us, sitting on a bench overlooking the ocean, both of us smiling like idiots. I rarely post personal stuff, but I was just so happy I wanted to share it. My phone, which had been peacefully quiet for weeks, blew up within an hour. 10 missed calls from Mia, a flood of text messages. I opened them with a feeling of dread. "Who is that?" "You're on a trip? You didn't tell me." "Is that your girlfriend?" "Jake, Call me right now. I can't believe you wouldn't tell me you were seeing someone. I thought we were best friends. The messages got angrier and more frantic. Wow, I see how it is. You find some pretty face and you just forget about the people who have always been there for you. She's not even your type. She looks so basic. After everything I've told you about my struggles with men, you go and do this? You're just like the rest of them. You only care about looks. I showed the text to Lily. She read them, her expression calm. This is the best friend you told me about, right? She asked. Yeah, I guess she saw my post. She doesn't sound like a friend, Jake. She sounds like she's angry that her property learned how to walk away. Her blunt assessment was exactly what I needed to hear. She was right. This wasn't concern. This was rage. This was a loss of control. I didn't reply to any of Mia's messages. I just put my phone on silent. The next week, I got an invitation to a birthday party for a mutual acquaintance, someone from our larger friend group. I hadn't seen most of those people in months. Lily and I decided to go. I knew Mia would probably be there, but I wasn't going to hide. I hadn't done anything wrong. We walked into the party, and it was pretty crowded. We were grabbing drinks when I saw her. Mia was across the room, talking to a group of people. Her eyes scanned the room and locked onto me. Her expression went from neutral to pure fury in a split second. She immediately excused herself and started walking towards us. It was like watching a shark moving towards its prey. "There you are," she said, her voice dripping with venom. She completely ignored Lily, who was standing right next to me. "I've been calling you for a week. You couldn't even be bothered to reply?" I kept my voice level. "Mia, this isn't the time or the place." "Oh, so now you get to decide when we talk?" she said, her voice getting louder, attracting attention from people nearby. "After you just disappeared on me?" "I didn't disappear," I said calmly. "I'm living my life. This is Lily." Mia gave Lily a dismissive, head-to-toe glance that lasted half a second. "Right. Her." She turned back to me. "So this is what it's all about. You finally found a girl with a pretty face and a vacant expression, and suddenly our decade of friendship means nothing?" Lily, who had been silent until now, stepped forward slightly. "Excuse me?" Mia scoffed. "Oh, does it speak? Listen, I don't know what he's told you, but Jake and I have a history. He was my best friend, the one person I could always count on, until he decided to trade that in for this." She waved a hand in Lily's direction. I'd had enough. "She's right, Mia. I was the one you could always count on. I was your handyman, your IT guy, your 2 a.m. therapist. But was I your friend? Did you ever once do anything for me? Did you ever once ask me about my problems?" The little circle of silence around us grew wider. Everyone was watching now. Mia was momentarily stunned into silence. I continued, my voice firm, but not shouting. "You complained for years about guys who used you and ghosted you. You talked about toxic men who only wanted one thing. But what were you doing to me? You used me for emotional validation and free labor. You kept me just close enough to be useful, but always reminded me I wasn't good enough to actually be with." Her face went pale. "That is not true. I loved our friendship." "No, you loved what our friendship gave you," I corrected her. "The second I stopped being your 24/7 support system and found my own happiness, you threw a tantrum. A real friend would have been happy for me. But you're not happy, are you? You're furious. Because the nice guy you kept on the back burner finally realized he deserved better than being someone's backup plan." Lily put her hand on my arm, a small gesture of support. Mia looked from me to Lily, then around at the faces of our mutual friends, who were now staring at her with looks of pity and disgust. The mask of the victim, the righteous activist, had completely shattered. All that was left was an ugly, entitled rage. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. She just let out a frustrated, strangled sound, turned around, and practically ran out of the party. The room was dead silent for a few seconds, and then people started talking again, pointedly looking away from us. Ben, who had been watching the whole thing from the bar with a huge smirk on his face, walked over. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Well, that was overdue." Lily squeezed my arm. "Are you okay?" I looked at her, and a wave of relief washed over me. "Yeah, I think I am." We didn't stay at the party much longer. We just wanted to get out of there. Walking back to the car, the cool night air felt amazing. It felt like I had finally closed a very long, very draining chapter of my life. In the days that followed, the fallout was interesting. I got a few messages from some of those mutual friends. Turns out once I was out of the picture, Mia had tried to recruit a few other guys from our circle to be her new Jake. They all said no. My public calling out had apparently opened their eyes. She had burned all her bridges. I never heard from Mia directly again. I blocked her number. I unfriended her on all social media. I just cut the cord completely. A few months later, Ben told me he'd seen her on a dating app. Her profile bio was a long paragraph about how she was done with toxic men and was looking for a genuine, kind soul who wasn't afraid of a strong woman. I just had to laugh. Some people never learn. It's been over a year now. Lily and I are still together. We moved into a new apartment a few months ago. When we were unpacking, we had to assemble another one of those demonic IKEA bookshelves. But this time, it was different. We put on some music, opened a bottle of wine, and built it together. We laughed at the confusing instructions and high-fived when we finally got it right. It didn't feel like a chore. It felt like teamwork. Sometimes I think back to the old me, the guy who would have done anything for a girl, who wouldn't even lift a finger for him. I don't recognize that person anymore. Ben was right. All that energy I was pouring into a black hole, I finally invested it in myself. And it paid off in ways I could have never imagined. I didn't get a new life by chasing after someone. I got it by finally deciding to build one for myself. The right person just showed up to help me build it.